Some statues are said in their cemeteries to be possessed. This would mean they look at you as you're passing by, even though at the blink of an eye, they would snap back into place. Now, anyone can prove this if they've got a video camera, but sometimes those video cameras glitch out because the interference of the occurrence is that strong. You would think that's not possible. Insane. Well, plasma physics is something that happened before the electrons cooled onto the nucleuses making atoms. And this is a dynamic that can be played out in high energy. What high energy means, we don't know, because the wave function spans out to infinity and beyond. The wave function never undermined it. It's a potential, not a literal. And so in this sculpture, if it's literally moving, it would be of its makeup having fixtures of plasma in it being interfered with something with more energy than what you can interpret, seeing as though it would take an advance, or a gander if you will, or a gander. A bee in its natural habitat, but what happens when his abdomen starts fading? These look like they're a bit washed. Look at, he's showing us the pollen on his leg. You still got it, dude. But why is your abdomen yellow? A bit pale. A bit pale. A pale comparison would be of a stark representation. Something of this could happen when you're utilizing things that aren't classically inclined to be, such as pebbles. When you skip them, you find flat ones to skip on water, and then they do a certain skipping of water. But if you grab berries, some of them can be riper than others. Grapes are actually the same type of, and they're smaller and more condensed. But if you drop them on some surface that's hard, they'll actually skip. The same as the stone on a water would if it were flat and thrown as like a disc. So what interactions could that entail? A water cycle. How much angular momentum would you need to bounce that berry and hit each of these rocks in a succession of the prior one? Almost seems like it would be impossible, but this dynamic is nothing short of how it's no wonder the electrons cooled around nucleuses of atoms, whereas anything of that dynamic coming afterwards would all suggest that it had been made possible by that. A water cycle. How much angular momentum would you need to bounce that berry and hit each of these rocks in a succession of the prior one? Almost seems like it would be impossible, but this dynamic is nothing short of how it's no wonder the electrons cooled around nucleuses of atoms, whereas anything of that dynamic coming afterwards would all suggest that it had been made possible by that. Wanted to hit the rocks, you'd probably dial up on an angle such as an L. Everyone knows that 2 + 2 is 4, and it's these things that are a step outside from there, where it's in real time and you can see all these things that have definite structures. The sky is blue, but then when it's overcast, it's gray. and then everyone doesn't like that. They get on with the platforms and say, this guy's totally discredited. He claims that the sky is blue when it's gray. It's stuff like this that would make great CGI because it has nylon? No. It's got neon coloration and then is matched with abrupt dark edges. People are really good at seeing things that aren't genuine on camera. They just don't have any validity. But how good is an actor at faking the funk for a salesman selling a sloppy copy? There's a whole bunch of ologies inside of academia, and they can all be sought out as which one's more important. But it's a damning fact if it's physiology being thrown under a bus for virology to prop up eugenics as what physics is. That alignment could lead to mind-altering things that are groundbreaking when they shouldn't be. The more that there's special effects that are glorified just to put over hiding, reading between the lines, it's really like you've got to not fight fire with fire. You've got to go stellar to put out the flame with, I'm not gonna get poetical, but you can see how much poetry there is within a special effects, and verbally it's just as powerful. And this is what in psychologically would be just as important as like the luminosity could seem. So the more that you've got instruments like things that have been seen to be just like toys, such as kaleidoscopes, gyroscopes, these have actual physical properties behind them that have implications to read out stuff that has been like CGI, but if you're getting CGI with a hybrid in it, it's gonna be like more realistic, because you can't get more generic than what a green screen is. So the more that you're using the landscape as a green screen, is be that much more impressive because it's more dynamic, right? So that would be a bit better. So corners play with light because they encapsulate them, or if you put light in a corner, it will propagate it. These things can be said for how much naturally occurring things do both. In cosmology, it is where the start of the universe happened from not the splitting of an atom, but a collective of all particles as one singularity. Splitting a singularity would have a giant explosion, something the same as though when a matter and an antimatter thing touch, they explode. But this was done with all the material in the universe. Well, then why didn't it disintegrate that instant? Because it has gravity within the interaction, acting as like subwoofers would.